Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here, and welcome to Integrity and Communication Against All Odds with Coach Les and Sujata Tiwari. Sujata Tiwari is the author of Against All Odds, No Retakes, No Manuals, Real Life Lessons. Sujata has accumulated a wealth of experiences during her life, leading to insights and knowledge that cannot be coached or taught in a class. She has been a mother, wife, journalist, consultant, activist, leader, and businesswoman domestically and internationally. In sharing her story, Sujata strives to provide readers of all backgrounds in any part of the world with real life examples on how to deal with the unpredictable nature of everyday life. And I am Coach Les. I'm an integrity coach. And tonight we're going to be discussing the discrepancy between the spoken word versus the actions that we take. And I'll say that one more time. Discrepancy between the spoken word versus the actions that we take. And I want to welcome Sujata. Good evening, Sujata. How are you this evening? Good morning to you. Good evening to me.
Yeah, exactly. Good evening to you and good morning to me. I'm fine.
What do you think about our topic for this evening?
You see, I'm a good listener, as you know, and over the past several weeks and, of course, months and all my life, I've been listening to people. And they say the same thing again and again. Okay, there's consistency in that. But when it comes to actions, I don't see that consistency. You can say all the good things and you can say, I love you every day. But if it doesn't show up in actions, then that is the discrepancy which um, I would say a stumbling block in how we go forward in relationships and business and everything else. Because the key to leadership, the key to any kind of thing that you do is actions. Actions speak louder than words. And that is always not matching up, is what I see.
And if we look at your book about Against All Odds, what do you see would be a great example to share with us from your book, and give us a little insight as to, because one of the things when we created these podcasts, we started about 7 months ago and we took a break all through December and most of January. Woohoo! and now we're back. And I'm curious so that we can share with some of the people that come and listen on Clubhouse, that are listening online, and I'm sure will be listening to the replays. What in this book, Against All Odds, what do you think some of the things are that are key points around the spoken word versus the actions we take?
Okay, that's very good. And there are so many, so I have to think and choose which one, or I could add little snippets of some of them. Uh, like if you talk of a personal relationship, for example, for years and years, I thought that I was, appreciated, or I was a good friend, and the person said, oh, I mean, put me on a pedestal and always would meet, would be very respectful, and would say all the good things that would make you feel good. So if you talk of dopamine and everything, you got a healthy dose of it. Only when one day the truth came out of what the person actually felt when he said, you should be locked up in a room and the key should be thrown away. Now, many a times my book has been read and many people have read it, but can you imagine me investing um, time in a relationship only to be told one day these kinds of words? How do you think a person is going to feel, right? So,
Oof.
so that is one episode, and the fact that it has stayed in my brain should tell you that it was not something small, not meaningful. So, one should move on. This whole thing of move on is also, I find it very contradictory, because people always want you to move on. But what happens to the garbage that is thrown at you and which stays? Is not that I want to keep it, but the computer brain also keeps it somewhere. Anyway, that is one aspect. Then, if you look at it from the business point of view, when I started a retail shop here with the franchise given to me, and if in the contract you write, contracts are legal documents, as most people know, right? If in the document you write something which is unheard of, I've seen so many documents, but it's never been written that we are giving you this contract based on your personal character. I mean, my character was so good and so valuable that they broke the rules of giving a franchise, because they were very particular about it as a, family business. And then to realize that you were hoodwinked, that it was not the intention for you to succeed beyond a point. So, you may go for lunches, dinners, and you might hear all the good words, but your actions always tell the truth, right? So,
Yep.
these two examples, um, which I think I'll start for now. Then let's see how the conversation goes, and I can give more examples.
Mm.
In Clubhouse, I must mention this. I may not be very popular for it, but in Clubhouse also I see this. People say, they say day in and day out that you join this, you join that, and you come here and you'll get all this thing, but they're not really connected with you. They don't even know you, and they are not even interested in knowing you. With that, I'll rest.
So, do you think, Sujata, do you think, since we brought up Clubhouse, let's take a quick moment about it because, that's where we met and that's where we've created our relationship. And, I look at, what would I say? I look at the possibility of meeting you someday and having created a great, extraordinary relationship with you. I'm in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be going to California and meeting a couple of people from other rooms that I've become friendly with. And then, you know, 2 years ago, I was down in Florida and I met a gentleman from one of the first rooms I was ever in, and another gentleman that I've known outside of this app, but I've also um, know him from Clubhouse. And one of them, it was an experience of got to meet him and his girlfriend and girlfriend's daughter. Girlfriend was awesome, daughter was awesome. And he showed up, things thought they were great, phenomenal. And then it was like meeting Heckle and Jekyll and Hyde. Met the other gentleman. It was a great relationship. And the actions have been consistent with him. And my wife went down to Florida last year and met another couple people. And her experience with meeting those two was they were identically what they were on Clubhouse in person. And what do you think is a key to listening for, or perhaps how do we protect ourselves? How do we know that we're meeting the right people, that we're like, what are some of the things that you think now, since you've had the experience that you've had, and I've had a couple of interesting experiences, what do you see now as a possible way of being protective or cautious, or what do you think?
Yeah, so what I think is, if we give it time, you can't keep up the pretense for too long. Okay, so no matter what you say on a platform, the real connection is when you really connect with the person. For example, if you take our friendship, we may have met in Clubhouse, but we are just a call away. When I say we are just a call away, it literally is that, right? If if for others, where I have been very consistently showing up, what we are always told by everybody, oh, you must consistently show up, you must consistently show up. They will add all the jargons, to tell you that your character is made of consistency and you must show up and you must do this and do that. Okay, so what happens if one goes missing? When I was not there for a long period of time, I know that only the true people who I talked to reached out and said, "Where are you? What's happening? All okay?" How much time does it take for you to do that?
Hmm.
So that is one aspect which will tell you that, when you're investing your time in any room, in any platform and all, then you have to ask yourself whether it is, going to give you any kind of meaningful value. Now when you go and meet those people, they may turn out differently. They may meet you, but they may turn out differently, and once they start speaking with you or interacting with you, you will get to know whether whatever you saw of them on a platform is the same as when you meet in a person. For example, if I come all the way to America and meet you, that should tell you about my commitment uh, a- to a relationship. How many people will do that? See, going to a state or to a city in your own home country is different versus somebody, you know, taking a long haul flight and then making the time to come and meet you. I don't have to speak, that my action should tell you. But it's not the same with other people. And I realized everybody is trying to sell something or the other. That's why you want your followers, you want people, and all that. But what do you give actually? Are you connected with the person? It's no use writing emails and saying, I personally invite you, you know, to some class or to some event and all that. Now we have artificial intelligence who can write all kinds of mails and all kinds of things, right? So, where are we? At the end of the day, it's the human experience which will matter. That's my thought.
Yeah, and I think, I'm lucky. Back in the early 2000s, I spent a lot of time on freeconference.com. I had the privilege and honor of doing a lot of coaching on freeconference.com, with small groups, one-on-one, and some larger groups. And um, the thing that I see myself doing is I spend a lot of time listening for the tone and the quality of the voice with which I'm speaking. And I know for you, that is like nails on a chalkboard when I say that. Um, And I say it because I've spent enough time now. I spent 6 years dealing with freeconference.com, listening to people from all over the world, um, mostly in what I would call Western culture worlds, but uh, India, parts of Asia, Europe, um, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. And my experience with listening is that it is hard to function without integrity for extended periods of time in a in an audio world. Can you hide it for a little bit? Yes, I think you can. I think you can cover, um, you can mask, you can keep a stiff upper lip, as the English would say. And yet, over time, the ice is going to melt. What are your thoughts?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Give it time and keep listening, and they will slip up, even though they master the art of communication, of covering up. So they can master the tone, they can master the words and everything, and they can become pros at it. But someday, sometime, when you're faced in a situation which calls for actions, or which calls for you to answer deliberate question, you may not always be able to keep up.
Yeah.
That's why I always say time will tell you. So never to jump in so quickly and believe in everything that is said.
Yeah, and it's interesting because most recently I dealt with the conversation, and then we'll go. There's a few people now that have popped up on the stage. We'll go to asking them some questions and hearing their opinion. But most recently, one of the things that I was discussing was, well, I didn't lie, and I'm like, okay, well, you didn't tell me either. You neglected to share a particular piece of information, that in knowing that particular piece of information, the actions that I would have taken would have been radically different. And for the reason that I took the actions that I did, based on you not sharing that information, I'm now having to deal with ramifications.
Precisely.
Yeah. And um, I've heard it called lying by omission. Oh my gosh. I said it and it popped up on our chat from Facebook. That was interesting. Did you see that, Sujata? And I did not touch the keyboard. That's from Jennifer Lane. Oh, wow. And I think this is something that people today, it's like it's become an okay social thing to do. And I can't, I, I remember the trouble I got in as a little kid and growing up, learning that it was inappropriate. It doesn't work. When you lie by omission, you, um, serious ramifications can happen. Like losing privileges, losing a job, losing, when things like that get found out. Um, do you have any experiences about lying by omission that you'd love to share with us, Sujata, from your book?
Yes, as I told you that when we did the business deal, for all the love and affection that they showed us, they never told us that we are not letting you go beyond one store, when we told very clearly that we want a chain of stores, right? When Conscience even talked to the founder of the organization and said he would like to open a store in London, that point of time, you never said that, oh no, we are not letting you do that. Instead, only when the store was designed and we saw that it could only house 500 products, then we realized we're not going to go beyond that. You cannot sell 1,000 things when you have only 500. It was as simple as that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, we have a couple of people up on stage that I'd love to just give them an opportunity. And I see Robert Paisola has joined us on YouTube. Good evening, Rob. Good to see you. Um, but I'd love to go to Michelle Trado. Would you like to? Do you have an example of a discrepancy between spoken words to you and the actions that were taken?
Wow, coach. Oh gosh. To be honest with you, words and actions go together. They can say anything how a person feels, but if they act like when they see you, when they talk to you, how they treat you, is that goes with the words they tell you. You know, that's what I like to see is, oh, you really care? You really want to, do this with me? You want to do that? Do you say what you say? Actions are so important to anybody. I don't care if it's in a relationship, if a friendship, and being honest, and you have to be. I remember when we were in April 210's room, she was talking about honesty and intimacy. Is sometimes we gotta say things to someone that we don't like, they don't like to hear. That's part of communication. But that person will respect you more and you're gonna feel better about yourself. Communication is the most important thing that you can have in a relationship with anybody, in a husband, boyfriend, girlfriend relationship, job. It doesn't matter. Even if you feel like holding back, but you have to say it. You have to say it. I want to give you an example of my line. The communication about having a chocolate candy bar and it was over my face. Oh, did you have those Reese's peanut butter cups? I remember eating it. It was like a little chocolate on me. And that was a mission. That was an actual lie, These little white lies can get you in trouble too. It's better to tell the truth than lying about anything. So integrity, that's what I believe in. Integrity is being honest, be true who you are, and say what you're gonna say to somebody and keep and honor what you're going to say. If you said you're going to do something, if you say you're going to promise something, honor it. If you can't honor it, don't say anything at all. And that's where I am, Coach. And thank you for my share.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And did you want to share something, Sujata?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. I just saw your mic was off and I just wanted to double check. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Momina. Momina, how are you?
Good day. I'm doing good. How about you?
Absolutely better than phenomenal.
That's great.
Did you want to share something about the discrepancy between the spoken word versus the actions that we take?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I was just listening to all of you, and I really believe that all of you and each one of you are above me and more experienced than me. But the thing that I have observed and personally noticed in my country and in other states as well is that we do lack sometimes integrity. For instance, let's say here in my country, by the way, I'm from Pakistan. in my country, when we support others and when we do something for someone, for example, I gave a pen to my friend, and or I borrowed a pen from my friend, and I say thank you. They would be like, oh no, there's no need to say that, and just like that, other magical words, thank you and sorry, and when you feel bad about something, you say, and other feelings as well. What I believe is these magical words are really necessary, and we should, make it possible to use them in our day-to-day life, because it makes a difference for me, at least. um, People say, like, formally, that there is no need to use such words in friendships and in relationships. It doesn't matter, but I think it makes difference. And I have observed this thing in Americans the most. They when they like, I am a remote worker, I'm a freelancer, so I mostly work with clients from USA, and whenever they have to, you know make changes in anything, I'm a designer, so they do use words like please, and then they ask me every time with good wishes, and on closing notes they say, with due respect and best regards and kindness. And yes, it has made a lot of difference to my life, and I really appreciate that, and I try to implement in my own life. So yeah, I just want to appreciate those people who use such words and make their communication easy and specific. um, you know I think so. I have cleared my point. So yeah, that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Momina. Really appreciate it. And, it's very interesting because you brought up being in Pakistan. And I know Sujata is in Singapore, and she's from India. And I think, my question to both of you is, do you think that one of the stereotypes that is present for me, and I don't know enough to agree or disagree with it, I just know that it exists out there, is that the Indian community, Pakistan, Tibet, that area, people have a very, their demeanor is very calm, very controlled, very level. And the Western world, i.e. America, more so than Europe, is wild. They're kind of like the wild child. And when it comes to this discrepancy between the spoken word versus the actions we take, I look at, if you were to give me 100 people from Pakistan, and India and Singapore and the countries in Tibet and Sri Lanka, and then you take 100 people from the United States, for example, I would say the discrepancy between the spoken word versus the actions that are taken would be much greater with Americans than it would be with the other group of the mixture of Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Singapore, Tibet. And I'd love to hear, first Sujata from you about that, and then from Momina, and just hear your comments on that, because that's been my experience. Very limited, and I'd be interested to hear from your points of view. So Sujata, I'm going to hand the mic to you first, and then we'll go to Momina, And then now that Jody's up on stage, we'll find out a little bit from her as well. So Sujata, over to you.
So when we started this conversation and the whole perspective of this topic, from my perspective, this is a global human race kind of a thing. But yes, if you talk of countries, then geographically and culturally, there are countries where it is uh, sort of ingrained into you that do not always say the things that you should be saying or want to say. You're told to, maintain a facade, and you're supposed to say the polite things, if at all, and not go into uncomfortable topics. You're not go into what you really feel and think. And in some countries you might be even punished for it. You might not even see the light of the day. So that is what I'm coming from, that while it's a human thing, but in some countries it's actually true that you don't say certain things, you never talk about certain things, whether it's in the family or it is in society or it is in the classroom or it is in your business place. You just don't, and that is what is the problem. And I could go on about it, because the next thing that people will nowadays talk about, mental health and well-being, right? So
Yes.
when you bottle things up, where do you think it's going to manifest itself? The word manifest is also loosely talked about these days, but if you're going to keep things bottled up, it's going to land up in giving you diseases. And the correlation between that is, even medical practitioners do not want to go down that route. They will tell you it's stress, but they're really not going to ask you what is the stress, why are you stressed, and do something about it. They'll just prescribe you medications and say, this is it. They'll just mention the word stress, but that's about it all. So this is such a vast thing, but it is what governs us every day in our life. That's why we are discussing this. We always discuss something which is slightly controversial and uncomfortable.
No, I love it. Thank you.
It seems as though doctors these days have quotas and time limits and restraints and guidelines that they have to go by, so they don't actually have time to diagnose you properly in many cases, really.
Ooh. Say more, because I'm following this track and I like it. Go for it, Jody.
For example, if you have an addiction and say they have a program for 30 days that the state will cover. But you go in and you have more difficulties and need special help from psychologists and just more assistance, and it's going to take you longer. They will push you out the door knowing you're not well and knowing you'll relapse and come back and they will up their money again because you're coming back for another stay, which they knew you would because you weren't ready to leave in the first place, but you had to go because they weren't going to get paid past 30 days. So it's just it's catch-22 in many instances, and doctors, they have 15 minutes to figure out your diagnosis, to write a prescription, and to get you out the door because they've got another patient waiting that's has kids at home, that the babysitter needs to leave, and the husband needs to go to work or whatever. It's a very difficult and complicated situation, but the doctor's under a lot of pressure.
They are. Would you say that pressure is coming from the discrepancy that exists between the face of big pharma wanting to heal versus the money that is being made in that world, that they are trying to force certain agendas? What do you think?
Well, absolutely. I think that the worst people in the world are lobbyists. And, doctors are just down the food line of what they're being told from the lobbyists to manifest the most amount of money in the least amount of time to generate the diagnosis. And it's absolutely a man-made mechanism for money making. It's sad because, like I said, the general health of the population, and I know doctors didn't sign up for this, just like policemen didn't sign up to have to do all the paperwork they do, or teachers as well, or psychologists. They want to, help the people, but there's just so much paperwork involved nowadays. They have to take time for that as well. It's a lot of things that go into it, and I feel like the patient's losing.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate this this segue, because I have some strong feelings about it. That I think the laws and the boundaries are extremely gray in the world of medicine and politics. Sujata, what are your thoughts?
You hit the nail on the head.
Well, let me go to Momina. Momina, what do you think about the disparity between your culture and the culture here in the US?
I think there are a lot of cultural differences. We do have in like US, India, and Pakistan, and other Asian countries. Like if we talk about parents and children, they really don't have that bond like children's and parents share there in USA. It's totally different from them. Like we don't have that communication level or that comfort level where we can share things with our parents. And yes, that made us into trouble sometimes. Also, I just read a book. I completed a book. It is written by a Korean author, and she have had like this name of the book is I Want to Die, but I Want to Eat the Tteokbokki. Tteokbokki is like a dish in Korea, rice batter or rice cake type something. So in her book, she really write about her relation with her parents and how the relation affected her life and how she then became a person. So this book contains the recorded sessions of her and her psychiatrist. Um, so she wrote like her parents used to fight with each other, and her father used to beat her mother, and then from there her self-esteem started getting low, and then she started um, going into school, and then her adult life she became a person who used to lie herself and with others as well. It doesn't mean she used to lie on purpose, but I think all the lies were unintentionally. uh, like she had a fear of being judged. So I think all of this is because of, I don't know, maybe culture, maybe religion, or something else. But it's all because of the upbringing and the environment that we have had in different regions. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Thank you so much, Momina. Appreciate that. And I I continue to see us, with this, with social media. And I mean, here we are, right? We're speaking live, getting to know each other. I've known Sujata now for a year and a half. And, uh, learning to see the differences in our culture, and also to learn to be mindful of the upbringings that we've both had and appreciate the differences that move between our worlds and not make them right or wrong. So, once again, uh, noticing that on another level, the discrepancy between the spoken word versus the actions we take. Not only that, but the discrepancy between the actions and spoken word from two different places in the globe, and the difference that impacts into the world. And my thought on having this as a topic for us to play with for a couple of weeks was to start to see how can we build a mechanism or build a community that starts a ripple of, is there a way to maintain the integrity of spoken word, such that if we know that we're speaking something that has the potential of being misconstrued or seen in two different ways, that we share that in the opening of our conversation and say, and my intention is that you look at this particular phrase, this particular rule, to to find a mutual direction that we can guide and support each other, called the integrity of comprehension. I think is the only way that I can think of, and I'm uh, more than open to hearing other people share their thoughts on this. And as we're approaching 45 minutes in the show, and we'll probably be ending really close to an hour. I'd really like to hear, what do you think some of the things that we could do to support each other? Creating a community opportunity like this, right? In a podcast, in a room, and sharing information back and forth is definitely a step. But what else? What other things do you think might be um, adaptable to use to honor what's possible in breaking through the molds? So I'd love to hear. I've rambled a little bit there. I'd love to see, Sujata, if you were able to capture what I was saying, and perhaps form an opinion on it.
No, you didn't ramble. You were trying to cover some points, which you did. So my thoughts on that are just very simple. If we talk of communication, we talk of integrity, we talk of, doing all this. How do we do it? If you want like minded people, first of all, each one of us has to be open and accessible. Today, if you and I are having this ongoing communication, why do you think is that? I'll make it very simple. It's because you are equally open and accessible just as I am. I always say that the first thing of figuring it out who's who is when I give you my number and ask you for your number. If you cannot share your mobile number, then that's the end of it. I am not here to come on stage in certain platforms and just listen or to say things which don't matter to people when I don't matter itself. Otherwise, you should share your number. That's how communications start and go forward. And the other point is that you must be authentic, be who you are without any fear. If people are discerning, they will understand. If people are like minded, they will understand and they will engage with you. Those who don't, then we don't need them. That is the second point. And the last point is what I always practice is before you speak, think 10 times, and before you write, think 20 times. That's it.
Hmm.
I like to always say as well before you speak, is it kind? Is it honest? Is it necessary? Because a lot of chatter sometimes isn't necessary. And another thing I like to hear is they say smart people know what you're going to say, and dumb people aren't going to listen anyway. So save your voice. Silence is golden.
I love that. You got to repeat that last piece, Jody. You got to say it again because I don't think I could repeat it.
They say smart people already know what you're going to say, and dumb people aren't going to listen anyway.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Jody. And Mark Laycock, who's on Facebook, says being considerate with having the intelligence to communicate without demeaning someone who's being vulnerable. Being considerate with having the intelligence to communicate without demeaning someone who's being vulnerable.
True.
Yeah.
That's like Jesus-like qualities.
Hey. I love it. You just got a fun face from Momina, Jody. No, I think that is wonderful. And I look at, as human beings, depending on where our temperament is, in other words, how good we're feeling about ourselves in the moment. Are we happy with ourselves? Are we frustrated? Are we having, where the balance is at? When somebody speaks to us and communicates with us, it's miraculous that we don't have more discord, like we don't have more upset, because it really is not the easiest thing to communicate into a person's world, not fully knowing where they're at, especially on audio apps. I mean, even though I'm sitting here visual on StreamYard and YouTube and Facebook, it's still tough to look and get some of that extra, 50 to 75% of communication called body language. And we look at the different backgrounds, the different layouts, the different clauses of potentially positive things that we say, potentially negative things that we say, all being maybe misinterpreted. And then people getting triggered because, oops, I said the wrong word in a fashion that the last time you heard it, it was in a very negative environment. It came with some physical ramifications that were also negative. Now, because I made a blunder and spoke, I'm now at the impact of all of that negative history. And it really is amazing sometimes as I'm sharing this to think of, wow, it's a wonder there isn't much more upset.
I think you have to identify with it to be upset by it.
Yes. Yep, I would agree with that.
I would say that, the person who's listening should pause a moment and not get triggered, for the simple reason, if you know the other person well and you know the intention, and you know that they probably didn't mean it, and they may not know that you would get triggered by something, how would you know? So if you do get, you can talk it out with the person one on one and say, by the way, uh, this is what happened, and I just thought I should let you know that, so that maybe the same blunder is not repeated, and you would be more mindful of saying things. But it doesn't mean that you, even if you get triggered, you should hold it against the person if you know that the person didn't mean it. You know what I mean?
Yes, and I think this is, oh man, this is juicy, because I think there are especially on Clubhouse, right? Because it's audio only. I think there are times when people say things that clearly you have said something that triggers a past event for somebody, or steps into a minefield of past events. And when that person hears it, I think what you said, Sujata, I think it takes an adult, quote unquote, to be able to say, whoa, I just got my button pushed. And the story that just got pushed was one I don't even think they know that anything about it. So my story is what got triggered. And it, for me to be able to be responsible, is the name of an exciting game. And when we discover that we upset somebody, we discover that it hit below the belt, although it never even started in that, it's because of where that person was at in life. Now we're going to get to start to understand how to build what I call extraordinary, loving, generative conversations.
I love integrity and connection. We're connecting with integrity.
Yep. Not easy, because a lot of people bring emotion into integrity. A lot of people have emotional thoughts about integrity, and yet integrity is um, gives us the opportunity to stay outside of emotion. Integrity allows us to create, as I call it, a wheel with spokes that either runs true or it has a wobble to it. And when it's got a wobble, it's out of integrity. And here's what we can do to restore the integrity.
Absolutely. I didn't realize the intricacies of integrity until now. And coming from a Southern background, sarcasm is just a way to deal with difficult subjects. And we often say things out of turn because of our culture, and taken out of place and out of text and out of context. It probably does need for me to look at how I'm coming across to the larger population when I talk like that.
What do you think, Sujata?
Yeah, that's right. That's why I said that, before you react to any kind of communication, you stop, pause, and think about where the person is coming from. Like sarcasm could be a way of communication for a lot of people. Even the British have that. And I had my British friends being sarcastic, but also quick enough to tell me that they love me to bits. So, that kind of a thing. So there might be a way of communication that you have grown up with, but the as you said, it's an adult kind of a thing where you don't jump to conclusions and all. You will know in due course of time whether the person means well, or the person is actually trying to pull you down. You can make that out, versus just a communication where you might have sarcasm or a sense of humor, which not many people can take. I agree.
Yeah. I think Mark is, I'm going to go through and just read some of Mark's contributions. Many people do not understand the difference between a trigger versus activation. A trigger comes from an unresolved trauma. An activation is in the process of healing with correction, in love and understanding. I like that, Mark. Thank you for sharing.
Hey, Coach, our emotions get in trouble when we speak to someone sometimes. Our emotions and our mind sometimes don't mix, and sometimes we'll say the wrong thing when we communicate to someone. So we have to be very careful that we don't trigger somebody.
Yes, and I think one of the things that, I'm gonna throw a little bit of fun into this. Think about oxytocin, right? That chemical that between a man, and I'm going to use the example between a man and a woman. I know there's other examples, but I'm going to use that one. That also, here's a chemical reaction that is driven by smells, looks, senses, that also drives a wackiness into communication.
Absolutely, I was trying to be a little funny.
Yep. All right. Well, I see we're coming down on the south end of the hour here, and I want to make sure that I'd love to just kind of hear some closing thoughts from everybody before we close the room. And I'll just start at the top of the stage, just as it's set up here on Clubhouse. So there's no particular reason. I'm just going to start from the top and work down. And I'm actually going to start with Michelle. Michelle, what any closing thoughts on today's show?
Yes, I do. I think I've learned that there is a right way to communicate and there's a wrong way to communicate. And I think it's very important that we learn to do it right to help other people in our lives.
Okay. Now, the one thing I will say, and I'm just going to throw my disclaimer out there about right and wrong, right? Who determines what's right and wrong? So when we use that language of right and wrong, I want to make sure that if anybody has any question about what Michelle just said, make sure you reach out to Michelle and say, hey, what's your definition of right and wrong? Where are your boundaries of right and wrong? So with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Sujata.
Well, I would like to close on this thought that in communication, it's very important when you communicate that it's responsive and not reactive. For example, if you listen and you immediately, without analyzing, without thinking through, and you just give a response, then that is reactive. It can lead to, putting more fire into it. Whereas if you think about it and then respond, then that is more of a better way of communicating, because you think of both sides and you think what was said, not said, and then you respond. That, I think, is very important. If we start doing that little bit, then I think we would have better communication.
Mm. All right. And from here, we'll pass the mic to Momina. Momina, what are your closing thoughts about this evening's room?
Okay, so I would really like to add into what Sujata said. I totally agree with it. And there is quote something like, listen to understand and don't just to hear it or for the sake of listening. And I think that totally makes sense. You should listen to others and understand it, and then you can, respond to them. You don't have to take things on your own. Um, so yeah, that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you, Momina, and thank you for being here with us tonight. Looking forward to getting to know you, and as we continue to move through this, we'll be here every week at 9:30 Central Standard. We may start a little bit earlier. I'm not sure if that is convenient for Sujata, but we'll talk about it. So make sure you check and see. Jody, what are your closing thoughts?
Well, I live my life and with integrity. I guess it's subjective what that means to you. I learned a lot about the ego in this conversation, as I was just trying to lighten the mood a little bit. It seemed like it was getting a little heavy. So I will also, through this conversation, be reminded to check my audience before I speak, because it might not be the right audience for what I'm fixing to say, in my integrity. And I've learned a lot from this group, and I will be back. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jody. Really appreciate your insights tonight, and also look forward to getting to know you. And Mark just sent a long note, so I'm going to read that out loud. A great key to communication is understanding where somebody's mindset is and where their emotions are. That will allow you to appropriately speak to that person from where they are at any point in time and their growth. And yeah, I like that. I think that's well stated, Mark. And one of the things that I think we want to always check in with people. If you are in doubt or you have a thought, there are many times that I've, in my lifetime, said, hey, what are your thoughts about this, and present it in a way that doesn't carry any weight, doesn't carry any opinion, doesn't carry any mass? So with that, Sujata, I'm going to give you one more chance to say cheerio or anything else before we.
I want to thank everybody who took the time to come in, and this is a room where only discerning people will come in and talk. So I thank you for your time and for your conversation, because that means a lot to us, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Yes, definitely. I want to make sure that this, we'll be back next week.
Coach Liz,
Yes.
I see another person on stage. Maybe we.
Okay, hold on 1 second. I just picked up my phone and went away from the stage for a second. Hold on. I just wanted to schedule. Hey, Bradley popped up. Thank you, Bradley. How are you, sir?
Hey, Coach. I'm well. Yeah, I had to come up and say thank you and appreciated the day today. I've actually on this app been running Rooms on Integrity every Friday for about, I don't know, I did it for probably a few, 6 months or so. And so I'm surprised it's the first time that we're meeting. But it's been great, and I really appreciate the thoughts today. So I had to come up and just share some gratitude before you close the room.
Well, I appreciate that. Yes, I actually have the club Integrity, and I used to, for the first year that I was on Clubhouse, I ran rooms in the Integrity room, and then chose to move and combine the Integrity room into the Ziegler Legacy room, and I've become known by several people as, here comes Coach Les. He's going to hold our feet to the integrity fire again. So it's a conversation for me. I have actually created the distinction integrity coach. If you go to Google, there's a guy that has a website called the Integrity Coach, but he doesn't call himself an integrity coach. And so I wasn't able to trademark it. What I do want to do, though, and what I have done inside of creating, my goal is to create a coach university where coaches come to, coaches that are already certified, people that, along with people that aren't certified. And the goal is to come in and communicate at a new level. And what does it look like? What does it look like to step into another person's world? And how can we do it with grace? How can we communicate in such a way? And I'm excited about this new twist to our podcast, Sujata. And I bumped into a blog on the internet about the top business ideas to discuss. And so we'll be taking a look at and hitting those topics and doing our best to create an opportunity to really empower, lift up, and I'm trying to think of just create a whole new level of how people view integrity. I've started that, Bradley. I think you were in here when I was sharing about a wheel, and I'm working on a couple bike wheels with spokes in the garage and cleaning them up, and they're going to be my visual. So at some point, maybe, I'm not sure if I'll have them done by next week, but my goal is to use an actual physical wheel and spin it and demonstrate. Look, it's missing spokes. It's missing being true. So I'm excited, and I thank you for being here, Bradley. Thanks for getting me fired up again around my conversation.
Yeah, thanks for. It's so cool to learn. I would love to pick your mind, and I know you're closing the room, and I'm actually doing some things here, and so I don't have time to get into it, but we'll definitely, hopefully, have another time too. Is Michael C. Jensen, and he flew down to my university from Harvard in 2012. And
Yep.
Spoke about integrity for it was about an hour, and it's on Vimeo, and it was such an impactful. It really just solidified this new way of looking at integrity, getting out of the moralistic fashion and all that. So it's just, I love people that are pushing this, not pushing, but rather presenting this new version of integrity that doesn't have to be so intense. It can actually be liberating and communicative and life-giving, like you have all been talking about tonight. So yeah, thanks for sharing the good word.
Oh, you're welcome. And Michael Jensen and Werner Erhard and oh my goodness gracious, I can't believe I'm forgetting at the moment. David Jensen, Werner Erhard, and I'm looking for the book, but I can't see it.
Saffron or Logan?
Yes, Saffron.
Maybe.
Yes, Saffron. What's his name? Saffron.
The last names. They wrote the book 3 Laws of Performance.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't remember the first names though.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, I have a book here sitting here with that was autographed to me because they come from Landmark and Landmark Worldwide, and that's where I got my 20,000 hours of training. I led the self-expression leadership program for 6 years. So that's where I learned what it was to take on integrity, honoring one's word, not necessarily keeping it, and keeping an empowering conversation of possibility alive.
Hey, yes. I'm always like, is there anybody that came at integrity from a different place? And I know Stephen Covey, he talks about the speed of trust, his book, and the first step is integrity. And it's such an all-encompassing just conversation that really gets to the heart of it. So yeah, we'll have to brain jam some more. This is cool.
All right, I just sent you all my information, and we can do a quick 15-minute check-in and see if we can find a time to chat if it works for you. And I look forward to it. And I'm super excited. I know Sujata's got to get going. She's got a Zoom call coming up, and since it's the morning for her, and we will be back next Friday, and super looking forward to it. And feel free to reach out to either Sujata or myself anytime. And thank you again. And thank you, Sujata. Thanks for being my partner.
It's my privilege and honor to be your partner.
All right, and with that, I'm going to do a little fun here. For those of you that just want to listen in, you'll kind of hear a little bit of a chuckle here, and then I'll do the self-destruct that I usually do to close any of my.
Coaching with Les has doubled my practice.
We've increased our sales by about 33%, blowing all of our goals out of the water.
In my first 6 months, I actually grew my business with his help over 500%. Literally 500%.
Les Hill is the type of person that invests back in you and back into your company. So if you're looking for a business coach with integrity, choose Les Hill.